Avarie here with Damon Benning to recap last weekend's finish against Purdue and to look forward to this weekend's matchup against Rutgers. Damon, where do we want to start with the first half at Purdue?
Well, I think I'd actually start like at halftime. And I know that's the easy place to start, but I felt like it typified kind of how the half went when Coach Rule came out and he specifically said, hey, listen, this is what we needed. We're in a tough game. We're on the road. We have to learn how to function in these type of games when it doesn't go our way. And so if you rewind just a smidge to the first half, I think he was trying to pick the positives out when he said that, right? They're moving the ball.
Yeah.
They had gotten them off the field at that particular time. Purdue hadn't converted any third downs either. And they hadn't turned the ball over. So I think he was just trying to build on the positives and say, hey, we're here. We're in the game.
Yeah. Well, touching on that, 25 first downs total in that game, which is like second highest on the season. I think the other one was UTEP. They had more first downs. But one, like we mentioned, only 1 of 8 on third downs. We can talk about the penalties. We don't need to because that obviously had an effect on that conversion rate. But where do you observe where things did fall through at Purdue on that third down?
So I think for them it is a little bit of the story with the penalties, right? You had the false start and then the hold that negated some third and shorts. But I think for Nebraska, it's winning on first down.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in positions to continue to get third and manageables where the whole playbook is open as opposed to third and long. So I think Nebraska is a team that's proven that they can. Well, shoot, they had a 2nd and 29 that they overcame, right, with the screen. So and we saw Dillon, I think, against Colorado. They had a 2nd and 20 some, and they ended up scoring on that drive. So I'm not saying that they can't overcome, chunk yardage. What I'm saying is, if you want to get better on third down, law of averages says the fewer yards you have to go, the higher the success rate.
I always love hearing the coaches and the players speak on the game once they've got to watch it back and see the tape. And it felt like it was interesting to hear Marcus Satterfield talk this week. And something that he said caught my attention. He was like, the question that was asked was, how do you feel like your team responded in the second half? And he's like, I don't think we had to respond to anything. We just had to keep playing. And I feel like that was a difference in perspective versus the fan base maybe, or the traditional media that were covering the game, that kind of thing. And the optimism that's been following Nebraska, where he's like, this is just a football game. It's just we have to keep playing. You're going to have games and situations like that. I don't know if it's a Nebraska thing that everyone freaks out when they see that kind of score line or they see the stats not match the game, but he was like, it was just a game. Like, we had to just keep playing.
That's a great distinction, because I think, and I would joke about this, and it's kind of become a thing that I got it from my buddy, but he says, you don't get this life without me in it. And those are the things that I love about Coach Satterfield. It's conviction, it's resolve, and it's quiet, right? He's not banging down your door saying, hey, listen, go back and watch the game. Like, we were just fine.
Yeah.
And he also didn't just go along with the question either. He's like, we had 210 yards in the first half. We had 200 and whatever it was, similar in the second half. Like, we played about the same statistically. We cleaned up a few things and we managed some points. Like, that's part of growing. That's part of football. You just have to stay the course. Yeah. I love the answer. Yeah. I also love the fact that I forgot that he said it until you brought it up. But that just typifies his personality.
Right.
He doesn't get rattled. And why we may not always love real time what's going on, you need that kind of resolve and you need that kind of conviction with a young quarterback and the pieces that Nebraska is trying to evolve. Because all I keep hearing is that it's an old football team. And I'm of the 56 guys in the depth charts, they have 8 redshirt freshmen and 7 freshmen. Yeah. They have 14 juniors. Yeah. How old are they? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like they're old in some spots, they're young in some spots. And I think his message was stay the course. I think that could be team-wide.
Yeah. And it's that what I'm saying here wasn't a knock to the fans either. Like, we're going to be passionate. We know that from them, right? We've heard that from them. That's just what the tradition of Nebraska fandom is. But I think
we just look at it look at it differently than a coach.
Yeah, I think it was good to hear the shift in perspective, especially from the coaching staff. And I heard you guys mention earlier, you mentioned it just now too, with the younger guys. Why hold the younger team to the situation in which the fan base is used to?
That's not their burden to bear.
Right. And if we don't want that result and we don't want to keep watching that, why hold that on them? If that makes,
100%.
I don't know. I thought that was really interesting that he said that way. And the last thing I want to talk about from just what they said over the weekend, you shared a clip from Rule on Twitter after the game. And I remember him telling us the summer before the season started, his coaching philosophy was going to be, I'm never going to tell a kid what they aren't and what they can't be. I'm going to tell them what they can be. Doesn't mean we can't improve them.
Oh, good recall.
Doesn't mean we can't improve them, but why tell them what they can't do? And that's basically what the tweet you shared was as well.
He says a lot of people are going to say what we aren't.
Yeah.
I like to focus on what we are.
Why was that so important for you to share?
Because I felt like that's for where this team is emotionally. It's important. Mm-hmm. Because if you feel like your biggest hurdle is psychological, then it's important to talk about accentuate the positives. Mm-hmm. And it's easy when you feel like a team may be in a place where they're unsure or there's uncertainty. And it's almost like a pep talk where, hey, listen, we're good here. We know this wasn't great. Let's build. Mm-hmm. When he talked about growing, I felt like he's parenting. Like he's literally just parenting, and so that tugged at me a little bit. And then the educator in me is that's how you have to. That's teaching. That's how it is in the classroom. Not everybody comes with the same skill sets, and it's in essence meeting people right where they're at. And I think that's when the real learning occurs. And so when he said that, it just caught me as, the whole caring, not coddling. And he was very honest. He's like, listen, there's some things we got to clean up in football. Mm-hmm. There's no question. I'm not dismissive of that. But we're growing. And we're growing in the areas that we need to. And I don't think he was talking about the physical components of playing football. I think he was talking about situational awareness and mental fortitude, right? He always talks about competitive stamina, and for him, I think it's emotional.
Yeah, the only way to know if you've gotten over that hurdle is to face it head on.
Right.
If you haven't, you don't know.
Yeah, that part of the presser totally got me.
Yeah. Well, we'll look towards this week. Looking at a Rutgers team that's 4-0, coming off kind of an interesting win against Washington. If you look at the numbers, if you've watched that game, just how would you dissect that result for them?
So, I'm a big never apologize for a win, and I don't think Rutgers will. I also think they have a coach in Coach Schiano and that staff that doesn't care what it looks like. They're into racking up W's, so they got that done. And, not but Washington probably feels like one got away. So that's not Rutgers' concern, though. That part is on Washington.
They're 4-0. Yeah,
they can deal with that when they get Michigan this weekend. Yeah. For Rutgers, it's like, hey, they're saying just the opposite. It wasn't always pretty. We gave up some explosive plays. We bowed our neck a little bit in the red zone. Yes, they missed the 3 field goals and had the 2 turnover on downs, but there's this thing about coaching when other teams don't capitalize on what they're doing. That's not only their responsibility, but Rutgers has to feel responsible for putting them in that predicament too. They could have scored earlier. Mm-hmm. They could have not made a tackle inside the 10-yard line. They could have maybe not forced them to snap it again, but they did. Mm-hmm. So don't be apologetic for what Washington wasn't. And I think that is 100% who this Rutgers team is. Unapologetic. They're going to be in it for 4 quarters. They don't give you anything. Mm-hmm. They don't turn the ball over. That's just who they are.
Yeah, and that leads me to this red zone defense. I feel like we've been hearing a lot this week. I was going to ask about it in terms of how this presents a huge opportunity for Nebraska to improve that third down conversion rate. Is this red zone defense as projected as it should be, or is it just something that Nebraska it is going to be a challenge?
I think it was good against Washington. It was where it had to be, mm-hmm. but going into that one, it wasn't. Right? Mm-hmm. They given up 5 of 6 scores in the red zone. Washington went 1 of 5. You can do the math. 6 of 11 puts you top 2 in the country in red zone defense. It's kind of a one-game scenario, but they were good when they had to be. So, again, don't apologize for it, but I do think it's more than just the numbers. For Nebraska, I think they're clearly better in the red zone, and you have to get inside. You have to get inside the numbers if you're a Nebraska fan. And in one hand, I'm saying, well, stats matter, and the other hand, I'm not. What I'm saying is Nebraska continues to get into the red zone. Mm-hmm. They're averaging 5.15 points every time they get into the red zone. Over time, about another half point. You get into the 5-ish per point per possessions in the red zone, that's going to win you a lot of games. That is top 25 caliber-ish football. Nebraska is close. So when I look at that, I'm continuing. I think at some point, if Rutgers is going to live by the sword, that's a dangerous game to play.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, Nebraska only allows 2.7 trips in the red zone per game.
Right.
They're not even letting you get there.
Yeah.
So as long as Nebraska's offense continues to get opportunities in the red zone, eventually that bow will break.
Right. But they do have some threats on Rutgers' offense. They're in the top half on scoring in the Big Ten. So what have you seen from them that do pose threats for Nebraska right now?
Consistency. So two things. Consistency, and they don't turn the ball over. They don't give you short fields. Their offenses can stay on schedule. It's not a heavily penalized team. And they win on first down. And so for Nebraska, first down has been we fast forward to third down conversion rate, but first down is important. And for Rutgers, Monangai, and listen, Calec Manis is 2-0 against Nebraska, and they're very familiar with his playing style, and it hasn't always been pretty, but somehow he got out of Minnesota with a win last year, and in a half 2 years ago in which Tanner Morgan got knocked out of the game, he probably was the difference in that game.
Yeah.
So he'll probably have some confidence because the last time he was at Memorial Stadium, he got himself a dub. Yeah. So they're not as dynamic outside the numbers, so I think that may play to Nebraska's strengths. But Rutgers' defensive line could pose a problem because they're pretty stout and they're well coached up front.
Now that you mentioned that, is that an advantage for Nebraska playing, even though it's in a different system, knowing exactly this quarterback's playing style? I
think it's always good to know your opponent's skill sets.
Yeah.
And they've seen Calec Manis's real time. Now, Monangai will be something altogether different because his running style, I remember talking about him in the summer on the show with Ravi. He's got an interesting style. He's very patient. He's real smooth to the hole. Then all of a sudden he's through it. It's a very good complement of how the offensive line, the schematics go versus his running style. So Nebraska's going to have to be patient, right? It sounds kind of like an oxymoron to say they have to be patient defending the run game, but they don't give up a lot of havoc plays on offense to defenses, right? The defenses don't get a ton of havoc plays against them in the ground game. So Nebraska's going to have to be patient with corralling Monangai in that ground game because it is very efficient. That will pose an interesting challenge.
Yeah. Well, on Nebraska's side, someone that I thought offered a spark plug to Nebraska's offense was Emmett Johnson in the second half. Do you think he gets more of an opportunity this game? Do you think he also poses a threat in the way he runs the football against Rutgers?
Yeah, he's got tremendous vision, and Rutgers has not been good on the ground. I think there might be last in the Big Ten in rush defense, especially EPA. So if I'm Nebraska, it kind of goes back to last week where it's a self-control thing. You want to be able to run the football. I think it's going to kind of be grimy, low scoring. And with every rushing attempt, that means Raiola is not making decisions with his arm.
Yeah.
But I think this one may pay dividends, especially I feel like this is like a Kansas Toto moment. If it's going to be that warm and that windy, I don't know about the passing game anyway. This might be a ground and pound kind of thing. Yeah,
we'll break this game down to three things. What's the most important?
So, number one, I think when Nebraska does I want to go back to the red zone.
Yeah.
When they get their trips in the red zone, get points.
Capitalize.
You have to convert those. Rutgers is allowing you opportunities in the red zone. Take advantage of them and come away with points. Number two is when you get a team that's stingy with giving you the ball, you can't give it away. So win the turnover battle. You're +5 going into this one. You're more than 3/4 of the way to the benchmark that Coach Rule set when he said he wanted to be +7 this year. So if you're not going to take it, if they're not going to give it to you, you can't give up any. So win the turnover battle. And then this is like, there's no way this is going to happen, DB. But you have to have a positive game-changing play in special teams. Rutgers prides themselves on their special teams. They get after you with blocks. They're good in the return game. Nebraska has to break even. They have to. You cannot lose the special teams in this one because I think it's going to be relatively close scoring. You have to break even in special teams.
Are you talking returns? Are you talking kicking?
So across the board, their coverage has to be good.
Yeah.
Nebraska's going to make a field goal this week.
Yep.
I'm almost certain.
Yep.
And knowing Coach Rule, I get the sense he's chomping at the bit to get the opportunity to kick a field goal just so he can see where his team's psyche is.
Yeah, like a quick.
He's competitive.
Yeah.
Right. So I could see. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
So Nebraska's not going to make a field goal, but they got to break even in special teams.
Well, there you have it. We will be back next week to talk about win or loss this weekend and look forward to the next one.